Hello, welcome back. My name is Scott Newhouse. I'm a certified financial planner, and today I want to talk about why you need to be aware of those so-called financial experts that you see on TV, the radio, podcast, newspapers, websites, wherever you consume media. There's people pretending to be financial experts giving you advice. I think there's a lot of negatives there. And honestly, the too long don't read of this entire podcast is you should completely ignore the quote unquote advice of honestly every one of these experts that you see out there. I'm going to go into why that is really quickly, and then I'm going to go through 4 examples of me kind of poking fun at people who I like, but they are not people that you should take any kind of investment advice from. The first thing that I have to ask you about these people who present themselves to be experts is, are they actually a financial expert, or are they simply good entertainers for this TV show, the radio hits that they have to do, the podcast hits, and are they known for generating good buzz around whatever media they go on, and so they get invited back because they know the show producers, the website owners know that financial entertainer is going to provide a lot of buzz and get people coming to their media site. The second thing you need to think about is, does this financial expert contain any conflicts of interest in the recommendations they're giving? For instance, and this isn't one of the examples that I mentioned here, but there's a guy named Grant Cardone, and he basically has been saying, don't invest in any kind of residential real estate. What you need to invest in now is commercial real estate. And conveniently, he has a company that sells, some kind of partnership in commercial real estate. Now, I'm not exactly sure why you'd want to invest in commercial real estate with so many people working from home and so many office buildings going vacant, but he's trying to sell you that. And so that's quite convenient that his recommendation is to not invest in residential real estate, not even buy a home for yourself, but to invest in commercial real estate when he's trying to sell you that. So you got to look out for these conflicts of interest. The third thing that I've got in terms of why you need to be very skeptical is there are misaligned incentives for the entertainers. And I kind of hinted on this before. The entertainer's not trying to make you richer, increase your net worth, or anything like that. They're trying to entertain you, which is fine, but you've got to be able to set that differentiation and that distinction. And then also, lastly, the gurus who make predictions out there, they say, the world's coming to an end, or we're going to have a 20% drop down in the stock market. They're not held accountable at all. It doesn't serve them, or it doesn't serve the person interviewing them to hold them accountable, because again, the whole purpose of the financial entertainment industry is to get buzz, clicks, downloads, sponsorships, what have you. But holding people accountable for their reckless predictions that harm people's actual financial lives, it's just not even a part of the equation for the journalist interviewing them or for the entertainer that's making these idiotic guesses. So there's a lot of terrible incentives out there. I really don't even think you need to listen to any of these idiots, but that's just my own personal opinion. I'm going to go through 4 different examples that just made me roll my eyes, and then we'll be done for the day. So the first one I have is Mark Cuban. He is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He is a billionaire. I think he started some tech company in the late 90s, when it was just getting started, sold it for a ton of money. Since 2011, he has been an investor on Shark Tank. That's the TV show on CNBC where these investors, they call them sharks, are able to bid on pieces of companies that normal people bring them as an idea. And so it's a very entertaining show. And I was my ears perked up when Mark Cuban went on a podcast recently, and he talked about what his investment returns have been since 2011 when he started the show. So let me play this clip right now.
Are you up all time on Shark Tank investments?
Nah, not. Am I up financially?
Yeah.
Oh no, I've gotten beat.
Really?
Yes, you heard that right. Mark Cuban, after 12 years on the show, has not made a single dime as an investor on the show, although I'm sure he has made plenty of money being a show participant. I'm sure CNBC pays him some kind of check for being on there. Now, I don't have anything against Mark, but this is emblematic of what we see on TV when people make financial quote-unquote investments. Those people are not trying to necessarily make you a better investor or help you become richer. They're trying to entertain you. That's the goal. The same thing could be said for Jim Cramer, who, I don't take any of his investment advice, but he's a really good entertainer. And I don't have anything against the guy, but he's not there to help you pick the best stocks because he's not even doing enough research when he's doing these rapid fire things on the show when he gives out buy, sell, sell, sell. He's just trying to entertain you. And so if you see it for what it is, that's fine. But just don't take any investment advice from Jim Cramer or Mark Cuban. And I'm going to put this chart up right now. If you had invested in the S&P 500 in 2011 when Mark Cuban went on the show, you would have an over 300% return on your investment in that same time period. As we heard Mark just say, he hasn't made a single dime in money. So Mark might be investing in flashy new gadgets and business ideas that are going to revolutionize everything, but he would have been much, much better off financially had he just invested in some index funds and not tried to even find these, crazy new ideas that are going to make him even richer. Okay, so that's the first example that I've got. The second one is Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell. Janet Yellen's the Treasury Secretary and Jerome Powell is the Chairman of the Federal Reserve. Needless to say, they have a lot of input about our economy and what goes on in the federal level. Unfortunately, just because they have high positions of power and influence in our society, that does not mean they actually know what's going on in the actual economy. Yes, believe it or not, they do not know everything and they can be wrong quite often. For years, unfortunately for us, they've downplayed, misstated, or completely underestimated the very real level of pain that inflation has caused hundreds of millions of Americans that we've been facing, well over 2 years. In March of 2021, Janet Yellen called the risk of inflation small, manageable, and then in May of 2021, she said, I do not anticipate that inflation is going to be a problem. Powell, on the other hand, or Powell, to add to that, continually insisted that inflation would be quote-unquote transitory, and thus he kept interest rates near zero. It wasn't until March of 2022 when CPI, Consumer Price Index, which is a great gauge of how much the cost of goods and services going up, when that was at 7.9%, that was when Powell finally threw in the towel and he rose the interest rates at the Federal Reserve. Of course, he did this right after the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, causing even more investor anxiety and fear. It is easy to imagine that had Powell had his nose on the ground more, that he understood what was actually going on with inflation and how much it was harming people, and he saw what people were experiencing in their daily lives for over 2 years, he could have taken a more gradual approach to raising interest rates that did not include the rapid increase that we saw in 2022. Now, the lesson here, just because a financial guru is appointed to a position in DC does not mean they actually know what's going on with the economy, nor does it mean that they know what good policy is. They can be just as dumb with financial decisions as the average American, you and I, and of course, no offense to the average American, because I think the average American knew what was going on with inflation far before Yellen and Powell did. Next up on our list is Dave Ramsey. Full disclosure, I like Dave a lot. If you do not know who he is, he's a radio show host talking about personal finances. I really do like him a lot. If every 22-year-old in our country followed his advice starting out of college to follow the baby steps, the 7 baby steps that he talks about in his book, The Total Money Makeover, the financial stress and anxiety that people have would go down dramatically. Society would be so much better if we followed his common sense advice. And I know other people have talked about that kind of common sense advice before, but he does a good job promoting it. Yet, the guy's not perfect. And when you talk about finances 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 20 to 25 years, you're going to get things wrong. He got a lot of things wrong in this clip I'm about to show you with the title of the video was, What Should My Retirement Withdrawal Rate Be? Now, his answer is invest all of your retirement funds in stocks, assume you get a 4% inflation, and then you're going to get a stock market return of 11 to 12%. And if you do all of that, you can safely take out 8% a year. Now, let's play the clip.
Okay, because this is how wealthy people look at it. They go, all right, if I'm making 12 and I'm losing 4 in purchasing power because of inflation. So if I'm making 12 and I'm losing 4 in purchasing power, if I pull off 8, my mutual funds will grow by 4 a year, but they have to do that to break even in purchasing power. Then, so if you can live off of 8% and you're invested in good mutual funds, you probably pretty much do it in perpetuation.
Okay, so the math adds up, doesn't it? You get 12% returns, and then inflation's at 4%, so 12 minus 4, obviously you're going to have 8. Then you take an 8% distribution, and then boom, you have broken even. And it sounds like, as Dave said there, you're not really going to touch your principal at all. You're going to have enough to sustain that in perpetuity. And so you might be thinking, yeah, that math adds up, Scott. What's your deal? What's your problem? My problem with that is that if you take his advice and then you get especially his advice about investing 100% in stocks and then taking out 8% per year, and then you get a bad 5 to 10 year period in the stock market, that could completely implode your retirement accounts. The technical term for this is sequence rate of return, and it refers to how bad returns in the first few years of your retirement have a significant impact on how long your portfolio will last. I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's a really important topic for people getting close to retirement. On the other hand, if you get great returns your first 10 years in retirement, your odds of outliving your money have just gone up. But of course, none of us know that when we retire, which means we can't just assume that we'll get an unrealistically high rate of return of 12% in retirement. And speaking of which, and his advice to have retirees 100% invested in stocks, I talked to a lot of retirees. I have in the last 8 years. I hardly come across a retiree who's willing to invest 100% in stocks in their retirement. And again, if the only way you're going to get close to 12% rate of return is if you're 100% in stocks. And stocks don't even, it's just completely unrealistic to assume that you're going to get a 12% rate of return in retirement. Completely unrealistic. I am going to share this on my screen. And it is an academic study that spans over 90 years, and it shows the probability of your portfolio and how long it would last given a period of time depending on your withdrawal rate. Now, notice the section here in yellow, which highlights Dave's recommendation of 8% distribution. And for you on the podcast, let me read this out to you. Assuming you take out an 8% distribution, the odds of your portfolio lasting 15 years are 74%. That's not bad, a little queasy, but not terrible. If you're taking out 8% and you want to have this portfolio last 20 years, your odds of success have dropped down to 61%. And that's basically 60 to 80. You've got a 61% chance of having some money in year 81 of your retirement. That's not good. 25% chance, 25 years of 8% withdrawals means that you would have a 50-50 chance of having the money left over at the very end of your retirement. So retire at age 60, take out 8% a year, you've got a 50-50 chance of having money at age 86. And so obviously, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting your family in danger of running out of money later on in retirement. If you're fine living off of Social Security and pensions and literally have no cash savings, no investments, nothing to fall back on, that's obviously your choice. I don't recommend it. I don't think you should do it. But if we follow Dave's advice, this is completely unrealistic and it's extremely recklessly risky. You should not follow this advice. It's not very good. Dave is great at radio. He's great at communication, but his retirement withdrawal rate is completely off. And the last person on our list is Ray Dalio. He is a famous hedge fund manager. Ray makes a number of media appearances on a regular basis where he pontificates about the economy and in the investing landscape. But just because he makes a lot of media appearances does not mean that you should take what he says seriously. Let's circle back to September 2022 when he said that if interest rates rose to 4.5%, the stock market would fall another 20%. In addition to the negative returns that 2022 had already experienced at that point. Now, Over the next 9 months, the stock market, when I did the calculations for this, was up 13.6% since that prediction, despite the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to between 5 and 5.25%. Even more so, in June of 2023, Ray Dalio recommended investing in the stock market, only 9 months after saying that he would stay away from the stock market if the Federal Reserve rose interest rates above 4.5%. I'm going to be sharing different screenshots throughout this where you can see from CNBC, Reuters, as well as Google's numbers in terms of the stock market return over that time period. But I want to point out what's going on here. Dalio can and will make whatever prediction he wants in the fall of 2022, knowing that the media needs his quotes. And people like to listen to his predictions and pretend that he is giving them wisdom, but he's not. Now, I actually know people, and I'm sure there's plenty others, who did not invest in 2022 because of him, and because of all of these other clowns in the financial media scaring and fear-mongering people. In other words, he cost real people who needed that money because of his fear-mongering. Yet no one in the media is going to call him out on his awful predictions because they want him to continue coming on their shows. They don't care if he's right or wrong. They care if they get viewership. They need to keep their jobs. Their job is not to keep him accountable or to make sure that he has some kind of accuracy rate in his dumb predictions. Does this make any of them bad people? I really don't think so. I think they're performing their jobs as well as they can, but their job is not to make you money, and it's certainly not to give you good investing advice. I said this in my last video. I'm going to say this until I am blue in the face. If you want good investing advice, invest in low-cost, well-diversified funds. Do not let your political beliefs influence your investing decisions. When the market's down 20% or more, stay in it. Add more if you can, and don't you dare watch CNBC on a daily basis. Go outside more, spend more time with your family, spend more time with your friends. Accept that you are not the next Warren Buffett. Your financial advisor is not the next Warren Buffett. And go save that time you spent previously worrying about investments on something much more enjoyable and much more worthwhile. If you do that, you will have far more wisdom than any of the financial experts you see on TV. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time. Bye.